So we've got a lot of microphones up here. Can everybody hear me in the back? How about, first of all, starting with a huge round of applause for Judy and for Rick and for the Sacramento Coalition for putting all of us on in the first place. Amazing. I want to thank all my fellow speakers, everyone who came out here to make this happen, this part of history. I thank you. I'm so proud and honored to be here, which makes it all the harder for what I have to say next. And the truth is, I can't give my prepared speech that I wanted to give you today. In fact, I've been asked not to give it, and been told that instead I have to speak to another audience tonight. And that's what I have to do, and let me explain that very briefly. Late last night, as I was working on my speech, something remarkable occurred to me. And I don't mean a thought occurred to me. What I mean is something happened. As I was working on this speech, it was as if the very air around me started to vibrate. And then suddenly there was a flash of light and a blast of sound and a rush of air, and it felt there was a sense of indescribable kinetic motion and energy that suddenly sprang into existence around me, filled the entire room. And it was as if I was looking through a tunnel of infinity that radiated out from my body infinitely in all directions. And then there were voices. And these voices, I could hear them clear as a bell in my head. They said, very politely, they apologized for the alarm and said they were here to talk to me. And I said, well, who are you? And they said, we're from the future. Well, that took some convincing. And once they told me a few things that I'm not at liberty to discuss, I believed that they said they were who they said they were. And I asked them what they wanted, and they said, we're here to ask you about the National Day of Prayer. And I said, well, wait, do you mean the National Day of Reason? And they said, oh, no, we know about that. And so I asked them, why are they asking me about the National Day of Prayer? And they got a little nervous, and they said, well, we probably shouldn't tell you this, but apparently this is the last one of them. Well, now, I was getting a little nervous at this. So I told them, look, I had no idea this was the last National Day of Prayer, and I don't know what happened to it, so I can't help you with that. And they said, no, that's okay. We just want to know what it was. So we talked a little more, and I don't want to bore you with all the details, but apparently it became apparent that the future needed to fill in a few gaps in their history book, something to do with some massive internet crash from too much porn and lolcat memes, apparently, but that's not important. Long story short, I agreed that I would talk to the future and let them know a little bit about why we came here today on this Thursday, May 1st, 2014, on the Capitol steps. Oh, and they assured me they worked out the bugs in the chronoscope, and so how did they put it? They said, any disruption in the local space-time in-dimensional topographical manifold should be barely noticeable. So with your kind indulgence, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to speak to the future. I'll speak to them right now. Greetings to our future audience. I'm here with your ancestors at what once was the capital of the Republic of California, one of the United States of America, in the long ago year of 2014. Say hi to the future, everybody. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen and pan-gender trans folk of all sexual orientations. To all humans, humanoids, mutants, and genetically engineered animal sapiens. To all cyborgs, androids, robots, and artificial intelligences living on Earth, in the undersea marine biodomes, or in high orbit at one of the Lagrange Point space stations. To all the hardy pioneers on the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt, and you colonists above interstellar generation starships bound for Alpha Centauri and beyond, hello to all of you. First of all, we're so very sorry about all the fish. We had no idea we were eating so many, honestly, and we are very, very sorry about the coast. I understand there's still a thriving shoreline real estate market, but it used to be in California, not in Utah. And finally, very, very sorry about the global climate collapse. I don't even know what to tell you, honestly. Please tell all the survivors of Peru and Australia and Polynesia that we are very, very sorry. Children of the future, I I know you have a lot of questions, and I hope I can explain our current situation so maybe you'll be able to understand a little better why your world is the way it is now, for better and or for worse. Children, you have to understand how it was back then, or as we called it, now. You might find this hard to believe, but right now, across the country, millions of people are joining together for what's called a National Day of Prayer. What's prayer, you ask? Well, it's kind of like talking to an invisible friend who doesn't always like you very much. And so you and your friends talk to the invisible friend and try to assure him, because, you know, he's a boy, that you and all your real friends agree that he's awesome, and we should pretty please stop causing all the world's problems, which are actually all our fault anyway. Oh, and I forgot to mention that your invisible friend made the entire universe and is all-powerful and all-knowing. And there are plenty of people going around telling people that they know everything that your invisible, all-powerful, all-knowing super friend says, likes, and hates. But unfortunately, almost all of them disagree on almost all of it. What's that, children of the future? You say it sounds like an imaginary friend. It does, doesn't it? Yeah, and yes, no, you're not wrong. There is supposed to be a separation of church and state, which makes a National Day of Prayer about as appropriate as a national call to blaspheme against God for all the crappy things he's done. Oh, I see. You want to know what good are prayers to an all-powerful and all-knowing super being anyway? Well, believers like to say that it's not because God, that's his name, God, needs to be asked anything, or needs us to glorify him, which would be pretty pathetic when you think about it. I mean, why would an omnipotent God need glory? Actually, they do say that, don't they? Why would he need to create anything? Why in the universe in the first place? And what was he doing himself before then? But anyway, believers like to say that prayer is not for God, but it's good for us. It changes the one who prays. And yes, I think it does. It makes them more servile, more powerless, more dependent, and it might make them feel better for a bit, until their problems come back, just like any other good drug does. Why was there all this craziness? Were they stupid? Well, I'll be honest with you, we've been here all afternoon, and a lot of them really were. But most of these people responsible for all this crazy nonsense weren't stupid or even unreasonable. In fact, for nearly every aspect of their day-to-day lives, they valued making rational, reason-based decisions very highly in all but one case. And that was their religion. Okay, how do I explain what that is to you? Religion was this thing mostly inherited from your parents. It's a system that claimed to give you the rules laid down by that invisible friend we were just talking about. Now, I know it sounds a little weird, but for a lot of folks, it had all their answers in life. Not that their answers were always very good. I mean, it wasn't all bad, but the best bits were just common sense for the most part. Now, I know I'm not making it sound very appealing, but you have to understand, even in choosing a religion, most believers picked their religion for good, rational reasons that made sense, and had absolutely nothing to do at all with their religion being good, rational, or making sense. Now, don't get me wrong, children of the future. I'm not here to pick on believers. As one of them, Richard Niebuhr, said, religion makes good people better and bad people worse. And some of those believers are here with us today and know that separating church and state protects all of us. They're big-hearted, they love their children and their neighbors, and I love them too. And I'm very glad they're with us today. People like that weren't the problem. The problem is, see, politicians, priests, and preachers soon found out that you could make a pretty good living from religion too. And that didn't help. So you'd get authority figures, both the sincere ones and the cynical ones, overly attached and ego-invested in all these religious explanations and stories and rules and taboos. So this all became very quickly very hard to change, even though almost all of it was invented in the Bronze Age by nomadic goat-herding types, and most, if not all of it, was later discovered to be clearly bullshit. This also led to problems. For instance, as we speak, our government's Science, Space, and Technology Committee includes Representative Paul Brown, who says, all that stuff I was taught about evolution, embryology, Big Bang Theory, all that is lies straight from the pit of hell. The committee's chair, Representative Ralph Hall, claimed that he didn't think humans could possibly be responsible for climate collapse, or as he called it, global warming or global freezing, because as he said, I don't think we can control what God controls. Yes, this is the chair of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Meanwhile, an 8-year-old girl's effort to make the woolly mammoth South Carolina's official state fossil stalled after a state senator tried to insert a passage from the book of Genesis into the bill, saying that God created the beasts of the field on the sixth day of creation. When that was ruled out of order, he proposed an amendment declaring that God created the animal, in case we'd forgotten. And don't even get me started on what some senators thought about rape and women's bodies. So what changed? Well, we did. This was the time. Children of the future, it wasn't quite so obvious to us here and now, but we were at the pivotal time for reason in this country. It was thanks to people like these here with me today, the ones who all felt like giving up some days, the ones who felt that they could have done more, the ones who felt that they had nothing to contribute, the ones who felt like beating their head against the wall from dealing day in and day out with institutionalized stupidity, fetishized patriotism, and well-cultivated divide-and-conquer tribalism. Children of the future, we didn't know that we would see all this come to pass with our very own eyes, that while we were duking it out in the trenches of the culture war, politicians were already noting the numbers of atheists and unbelievers were growing stronger every day and had been going on for quite some time. They saw that the generation in college now was the least religious generation in human history. All the while, they watched the numbers of Tea Partiers, fundamentalists, and the rest of Fox News' rightful prey dwindle steadily, losing more every day to senility and the grave. We didn't know that politicians were already cynically doing their calculations and planning their defections. We heard religion growing louder and more frenzied in its thrashings, not because it was growing bigger, but because it was growing smaller, weaker, and more terrified of its own mortality. We listened to it kicking and hollering and crying like a screaming baby as it circled the drain, still pointing the finger of blame at everyone else but himself. And we say good riddance. Not because religion is evil, without any trace of goodness in it, though it sanctioned, fatwaed, facilitated, and commanded the most unspeakable evils, cruelties, ignorance, and hatreds. Like the mathematician Hypatia, who was seized, carried away, stripped naked, and butchered on a church floor by Christians using shards of tiles to skin her alive while her screams echoed across the sanctuary. Or Giordano Bruno, who dared to speak the truth, and so died in flames with his tongue in a vice, while pious men nodded in approval. Or the transgender girl being attacked by Christians right now as we speak, somewhere in America, and the one who will be attacked in another 6 hours, and 6 hours after that. And not because religion is ugly, without any hint of beauty. There are not enough stained glass windows to cover up the blood-stained sins committed daily on the hearts and minds of believers, nor enough gospel choirs in heaven to drown out the howls of the damned in hell. Not because religion is harmful, without any human kindness, though history groans under the weight of pain and violence demanded by a God through the centuries, in every sacrifice, every stoning, every stroke of a lash or swing of a scimitar in a market square. No, we say good riddance because despite whatever else religion is or isn't, religion is simply untrue. And whatever measure of goodness, beauty, and kindness believers have brought into this world in the name of their faith, the self-serving lies of religion have been utterly, utterly unnecessary for any of that. And believing lies with all your heart doesn't make them any prettier or any closer to reality. Of course, children of the future, the best parts of all these religions are still with you, and that's because they never were just religious rules handed down by an invisible super friend to his chosen favorites. They were ideas thought up and developed by people like us and like you, trying to come up with ways to make life better for everyone, that were fair and just made sense. So, children of the future, our children, we here today in the first part of the 21st century want to apologize that it took so long to make reason a priority, that it took us so long to know this astounding universe we call home because we were distracting ourselves with made-up bullshit that wasn't a fraction as fascinating as reality in the first place. That it took us so long to ease up on bickering with hating and even killing each other over literally nothing. And that it took us so long to realize that we don't have to tart up the truth with silly lies. We're so proud of you, children of the future. Keep doing amazing things, keep growing the peace, and using all your creativity to make the universe a more vibrant place than it would have been without all of us. We salute you. From the year 2014, Dave Fitzgerald out. And speaking of tarting up the truth with silly lies, for you with me today, if you are harboring any doubts at all about this scenario and all this talk of messengers from the future, well, good. I encourage that skepticism, even when, especially when, the message is one we so desperately want to hear. So be skeptical, be cautious, be kind, be yourselves, be the best selves you can be, and be reasonable. If all of us set out to do that, we really can make every day not a national, but a universal day of reason. And remember, the future is watching.